Hello everyone, this is Manoj. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll see and learn how we can create a .NET 8 project using .NET Core and how we can create login, registration, get user, get a particular user profile. We'll see how we can create those APIs and we will use Entity Framework in that. So I have already opened this Visual Studio 2022. So here to create a new project, let's create this link, create a new project. And then from this template, you can search .NET Core Web API, or let's say if you have already created multiple projects, then you will see a direct link over here. So you see this is loading. So once all the templates will be loaded, then we can see the links. See here, so this is recent project template. So you can click here, or if you want, you can search from here also. So we have a direct link. So let's create on that. Click next. Now we have to provide a name. So let me give .NET 8 login app, and let me give a location also. Click on next, and from here if you click on the drop down, you will see all the available frameworks over here. So this is .NET 8, the latest. Let's click on it and let's uncheck this, otherwise you will get some issues for HTTPS while using or consuming the APIs. Rest you can leave as it is. Click on create. Now, so this will take a moment to create your new project. If you see this small window, it is saying creating projects. So it takes some time to create your project setup, all file and folders. So once we get the project, if you see, this is still in loading stage. So this is your solution explorer. So here we can see multiple folders like properties, controllers, and we have some files also like app settings.json, program, weather forecast.cs. So the project has been loaded now. So if you see, this is our starting page. So it says this is your project, ASP.NET documentation. If you want, you can explore this, but let me close. We don't need this. So now let's talk about the solution explorer. So we have services. So whatever services you will add, you will see the list over here. And we have the dependencies. And in the dependencies, we have packages. So if you see, by default, we get one package this is we use for Swagger page. So whenever we run this project, so we'll get a Swagger UI, and that is useful to test your APIs. All right, we'll see it later. And this is your framework. And let me close dependencies. In the properties, we have launch settings.json. If I open it, so we'll see the default URL and other settings. Okay, if you see here, the launch URL is Swagger, means whenever you try to run this project, so it will point to Swagger UI page, and this will be your default URL. Okay, let's close this also. So in the controllers, by default we'll get a single controller called weather forecast controller, and this controller uses this particular model, weather forecast.cs. So we have some properties, and based on these properties we get some result for this get API. Okay, and another file we have app settings.json. So here we keep all our configurations like connection string, and let's say if you have some static path, so you can keep all those properties over here. And we have a program.cs. This is our startup file. So whenever you try to run this project, so first it loads this particular file, and based on the configurations, based on the properties, whatever you mention, it applies and then run the entire project. All right, so this is about your solution explorer. So now let's try to create the uh, our entity framework and our APIs. All right, so the first step we have already covered, to create a .NET Core project using .NET 8 framework. Now the second step, we have to install some NuGet packages. So for that, you can right click on it and click on manage NuGet packages, and you can also go from tools, NuGet package manager, and NuGet package manager. All right, so either way you can create. So here it will open our NuGet package interface. So from the browse, we have to install some packages. So the first package should be our Microsoft.NET Web API.core, Microsoft.ASP.NET web API.core. So this is the project. Click on your project name, and this is the latest version. Click on install. So this will install our project. I accept. Now the another is entity framework core. Entity framework core. So Microsoft dot entity framework core. So we have the latest version, but I have tried it. If we install the latest one, it says it is not stable. So let's try to install a lower version, that is 8.0.3. I accept. Another one is entity framework core.design. Core.design. Same version for this, 8.0.3. Install. I accept. And another one is SQL Server. So Microsoft.entity framework core.SQL Server. Same 8.0.3 version. Install. I accept. And the last one is entity framework core.tools. So let's type tools. Microsoft.entity framework core.tools. Same version for this, 8.0.3. Install. I accept. So these are some packages which we need to install in order to create an entity framework core application using .NET Core. So if you go to your installed window, we will see all our packages. So webapi.core, entity framework core, design, SQL Server, tools. All right, let's close this. So this is our second step. Third step is we have to create our model classes. So to do so, let's add a folder called models. So let's create a user class. All right. For user, we will create a register API, login API, get all users API, get a particular user to update or get the profile. All right. So new folder. We have already created a new folder. Let's add a new class. So the first class should be your user class. So inside this, let's create some properties. So to create a property, we have a shortcut. Just type prop and hit tab, so it will create your entire property, and you can change your data type as well as your property name. So the first will be user ID. Let's create another property that will be a type of string. Let's say first name. Let's copy this. Last name, email, password, prop int is active, and let's make it as 0 always or 1 always. 1 means active. We consider 1 as active. So based on your project requirement, you can make it bool or whatever data type or property you want, you can make it. But I'm considering this as 1 is active, 0 is inactive. And the last one is date time created on. All right. And let's make it as date time dot now. So if you pass any value for this property, so that it will take that value. Otherwise, it will take this default value. All right. So these are default values. And let's also make this 0. Save. So we have created our user model. Now let's also create some DTOs. DTOs nothing but data transfer object. So let's create a new class for registration. So let's say user DTO. Inside this, we will keep only those properties which we require to for a new registration. So let's copy these one first name, last name, email and password is active, we will consider one as active for all new users, and date time is current date time. All right, for a new user, for a new registration, we don't need user ID. So our user DTOs ready. Now for login, we will use email and password. So let's create one more DTO here. So and give it a name login DTO, and let's copy paste email and password. All right, so this login DTO we will use for login purpose. So this is our third step. So next step is we have to create a connection string to establish a connection with the SQL Server database. So for that, let's go to the app settings.json, and here we have to add connection string. So we have a tag connection string, and inside that we have to provide a key pair value. So our key, let's say DBCS, database connection string. That's again up to you. Whatever value you want, you can give it. But it should be a meaningful name. But for this video, I'm just considering as DBCS, database connection string. All right. So the first property will be data source. Data source is nothing but your SQL Server name. So go to your SQL Server, click on connect database engine. So this is your server name. Let's copy. In your case, this will be a different value, so don't use my, otherwise you will get an error in the database connectivity. Next property is the database name. So initial catalog, and let's give any meaningful name. For that I'm using .NET 8 demo db, .NET 8 demo db. Okay, and so this is our second property. First is data source, second is initial catalog, third one is, so if you see here, if I again go to the window, so here I'm using authentication as Windows authentication, so I don't need to provide username and password. So in that case, we have to give integrated security true, and trust server certificate, trust server certificate as true. But if you're using SQL Server authentication, then you have to pass user ID and password. All right, let me again change it to Windows authentication. So our connection string is ready. Now next step is we have to add our DB context class. So again, let's go to the models and add a new class, and let me give this name as my DB context, my DB context, not SB context, and this class will inherit our DB context class, DB context from Entity Framework core. Now let's create a constructor. To create a constructor, we have again a shortcut. Simply type CTOR, hit tab, so you will get a constructor without any parameter. But here we have to pass some parameters. So DB context options. So here, and let's give the class name as the first parameter over here, and create an object. Let me give a name as options, and this will again inherit base class using the same options. So my DB context options, my DB, let me close this here, not here. All right, so our constructor is ready. Now here we have to provide our DB sets. DB sets are nothing but our entities. So based on these DB sets, our SQL table uh, get created. All right, so in our case we have one entity, the main entity is user. So let's create a property. So public DB set user, users. All right, uh, most of the part has been done by the intelligence, thanks for that. So save. So our DB context is also ready. So the next step is we have to run the migration in order to create our initial migration class, and then we have to run our update database command in order to create the database. So for that, go to tools, you get package manager console. So here to run migration we have a command add migration, and you have to give any name. So let me give initial migration, hit enter. So based on your models, based on your DB context, it will start creating the database, not the database, the DB context class. So here we will see all your script like create database script that will be based on your app settings database name, and then create table, which is our users, and you will see all the properties these here in the table script. Okay, we are getting one error, and this error is because, let's go to our program.cs file, and here we have to inject our DB context class. So builder dot services dot add DB context, and here we have to give our context name, so which is my DB context, and here let's say e dot use SQL Server, and here we have to get our connection string. So builder dot get connection string, sorry, builder dot configurations dot get connection string, and here we have to give our key name. In our case, our key name is dbcs. If you again go back to app settings, just copy, paste, save. Let's try to run the same command again, add migrations, and if this command is successful, then we will see we got a new migrations folder, and in this we have two files. And if you notice here, this is some GUID name, and the class is initial migration, which is nothing but a migration name, and we have this create table script. All right, now the next step is we have to run our command as update database. So this command will create our database, and also it will create our users table. So let's wait for some time so that it will execute. Keyword integrated. Okay, there is a typo, that is integrated. Let's save. Let's run the same command again. I hope this time it will execute. Yeah, perfect. So it says done. So our database should be created in the SQL Server. Let's go to the SQL and right click on your databases, refresh, and database.NET 8 demo DB. So it should be here in this list. So see .NET 8 demo DB, and if I expand the tables, we should get table C migrations and the users. So if I paste the database name here, and if I say select star from users, so see all the properties are here. So our database has been created as well as the table. So let's go back to the Visual Studio, and now let's try to add one controller. So add in the controllers folder, controller, and as our model suggests user, so let's give it a name. Make sure you will create or you will select this API and then API empty controller, and as per the model I'll give name for this controller as users controller, users controller. So controller is created. Now here, first let's create the constructor of this user so that we can inject our DB context class for the dependencies. So ctor, and here private read only my db context. Now this dot db context is equal to db context. So the constructor part is ready. Now let's try to create the register API. So for that we will use HTTP post because we will post the data from front end to back end. All right. And let's also give this a route as registration public action result registration, and in the input let's give our user DTO because we only need some properties, not all the properties. So user DTO, and if is not model state dot is valid, so we'll say return bad request model state, and if not, then let's use our user. So where user is equal to, as of now all the properties or values are in user DTO, but in the DB context we cannot add this class because in the users class we will need a actual user of this user type. All right, so DB context, and let me delete this one from here. So DB context dot add users dot add, and here we can create a new user based on the user DTO. User, so here first name is equal to user DTO dot first name, last name is equal to user DTO dot small u, last name, email user DTO dot email, password user DTO dot password. So this will add a new user, copying all the properties from this user DTO to this new user. All right, and after this db context dot save changes and return okay user registered successfully. Okay, so now what will happen, whatever values you will send from the front end, it will take those values and add in the database. But what will happen, let's say if I try to add multiple users with the same email ID, so there is no validation, right? But to apply that validation, first we have to check which email ID is coming that exists in the database or not. So let's verify that also. So where obj user is equal to, and let's find db context dot users dot first or default x dot email equal user DTO dot email. Okay, if obj user equal null, then we will add user as a new user. In the else part, we will return bad request user already exists with the same email address. Save. So now it will first check if the email ID is already there in the database or not. If it is there, it will say already exists. If not, it will add the user in the database and says user registered successfully. So this is our registration API. Now let's create another API for login. So again, for login, we will send the data from front end. So HTTP post. And for this, let's add a route as login public action result login, and this will take login DTO as input. So login DTO for login where user is equal to db context dot users dot first or default x dot email is equal login DTO dot email, and then x dot password equal login DTO dot password. If user is not equal null, then return OK with the user, and else return no content. Save. So this is our login API, and let's also create one API that will be a get API. So HTTP get, that will return all the users, get users, public action result get users, return db context dot users dot toList. Sorry, return OK. So this will return all the users in the database. Now another one is HTTP get route get user. Let's copy this from the top and change this to get user, and here we will pass any ID, user dot first or default. So x dot user ID is equal ID. save. So here we can also do like this, where user is equal to if user is not equal null, then return this, else return no content. Save. So we have created all the APIs like registration, login, get users, get user. All right. Now let's try to build this just to confirm if there is any compilation errors or not. Oh, we have one. Okay, I forgot to put semicolon. Save. Let's build again. So build is succeeded. Now try to run it. To see localhost 5215, this is our base URL, and as in the launch settings we have Swagger as a default URL, so we will see this Swagger UI. So we have four APIs: users, registration, login, get users, and get user. All right, so let's try to test all the APIs one by one. So let's try this registration first, try it out, and let's give name as Mark David, mark at gmail.com, and password as 123457. Execute. So we got one response as user registered successfully as, and the status code as 200. So let's verify here. So we got this one, and is active and date we are getting as default values. And if I again try to execute, let's see what message we get. So user already exists with the same email ID, so our email validation is also working. So let's change this one, let's make it David Mark. Now if we try to execute, so user registered successfully, so registration is working. Now if we try to consume this get users API, so we'll see two users, so one, two, Mark David, David Mark. Okay, and let's also try this get user API. So as of now we have two users. All right, so let's try to get the first user, and if I give two, okay, it is not giving anything. Let's see. So let's try to put a breakpoint over here. Oh, okay, there is again a mistake. So give we have to pass this user as a input for this. Okay, so let's try to run this project again. So this time if you this email ID uh, is available in the database, so we'll get the same user, otherwise we'll get no content. So get user, try it out. user ID 1, execute. So we got the user with the user ID 1 for 2. We got the second user, and if I give any random ID which does not exist, we say 204, no content. All right. Now let's try to test the login API also. So let's go back to the database. Email as this one, password this, execute. So if user is valid, then we'll get all the properties of user. So here I have done a mistake. That is not a mistake. Again, we should not expose the password. All right. So that you can change it. So you can only return all the properties other than password. All right. So password should not be written for in any case. So this is working. If I change the password, I give wrong information, then we say 204 not found. All right. So this is how you can simply create your .NET Core Web API project using .NET 8 framework, and you can add your namespaces, you can add your model classes, you can add your DB context, and simply you can create a controller and your APIs. Alright, so this is about today's video. In my next video, what I'll do, I'm trying to create a complete blog application using .NET Core with a .NET 8 framework, and for front end I'm using the React.js project. And again, that will be a complete full stack application using front end in React.js, backend in .NET Core Web API and SQL Server and Entity Framework. And in that project, I'm also using that repository pattern. So we have interfaces and we have repositories. I'm not using the entire DB logic over the controllers. All right. So in that project, I'm creating separate things. All right. So if you have any specific requirement or specific things in your mind which you want me to cover, you can give your comments on this video comment box. All right. And if you again trying to create any college project, or if you are doing an internship and you are facing any difficulties, and if you need any kind of technical help, you can also contact me. You can find my contact details in my channel descriptions, and like there is my direct WhatsApp number. You can find my Instagram handler, so you can direct ping me and we can help each other. All right, so this is about today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.